The following is an interview with three extremely experienced game developers. Jamie, Lewis, and Peter joined me to talk about SpellCraft, the new game that their company, One More Game, has just released on Steam. It's available for you to go try out now and see that it's actually a lot of fun and kind of get an idea of what they're talking about. This is an in-depth interview where we got into a lot of the technical stuff for building out a real big competitive game that's able to scale to massive numbers of players, and these guys have the experience of doing that. And if you're interested in these longer, more technical interviews, please let me know, hit that thumbs up button, and go check out the game down below. It's free to try out. You can play it right now, and again, you can play it while we talk about it if you want. And finally, don't forget to check out Game Dev Guild. It's coming up in May. We've only got a couple weeks left, and there's a big mixer coming up in about 1 week. Let's get started with the interview. Hello, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining me. Today I'm here with Peter, Lewis, and Jamie from One More Game, who've got a really awesome new game that's available now for you to try out, and they're here to share it and talk about the game development process, how they came up with the game, and dive into some of the more technical stuff on how they built it in Unity. So welcome Jamie, Lewis, and Peter. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited about this. The game is a lot of fun, and I've been having a lot of fun kind of following along, and I'm excited to finally be able to talk about it. So thanks again, and welcome. So before we dive into technical stuff and kind of the backstory, can one of you give just a quick overview of what your company is, what the kind of the game company is, and more specifically, what the game that you've just put into a public alpha is, so that people can know about it and go try it out?
Yeah, sure. So we started about 4 years ago as a company. A lot of us have worked together on stuff like StarCraft, Warcraft, Guild Wars, League of Legends, Magic. We've got a pretty great crew of people. And we set out to build something that was brand new, something that you couldn't download on Steam, not a sequel, not a prequel, not a remake. Nothing wrong with those games. I love them, play them all the time. But we wanted to build something that you couldn't get anywhere else. And we do that through genre bending. I'm one of the founders of the company. My co-founder is Patrick Wyatt. He's worked on Warcraft and StarCraft and Diablo. And one of their claims to fame was taking things and making it real time. And what we actually set out to build was a real-time card game. But about 4 months into building it, we realized it doesn't exist, that your brain is completely at odds of playing a card game and trying to make it real time at the same time. We made some pivots, and we started putting three-dimensional objects on a board and using those cards to play against them. And literally fast forward 2.5 years now, and we've recorded video from each and every playtest, which we playtest every week. And if you look at the game today, it looks nothing like the thing that we started out to do. But really, we had, the only intent was, let's build something brand new that you can't get anywhere else. And we work with players directly to take their feedback and take action on it to turn it into something fun. And we just keep working until we make something that players love. And so SpellCraft is what we call a real-time battler. Like you had said, we're going into a public event on April 6th. We're going to run it for about 10 days. Anyone can freely download it on Steam and give it a shot. It's really hard to describe. That's why we're taking the NDA off, letting people play it. But it is a real-time game where you command an entire, basically a MOBA team fight. And plays out over a set of rounds. Games are about 15 minutes long or so. And it's 1v1.
Yeah, it's very telling that you guys went through so many changes. Like, I've been playing with it for quite a while. Got on one of the earlier alphas, and I've seen how much the game has changed and how much you guys have been kind of responding to player feedback to make it better. And that I've seen like what that actually changed, what that change has done, and how much you guys have improved it, and how drastically it's changed. Can you talk just a little bit about that process of how you guys determine, how do you decide, like, okay, we want to make this change, we want to make another change, we want to pivot again? Like, is there some data behind that? Do you guys figure that out? Do you just kind of like decide, hey, we don't like this version, we think this should change? Like, how does that process of finding the fun and making the game actually fun, which I honestly think you guys have done now, how does that go about? Like, can you just share that, maybe some tips that other people can steal?
Absolutely. This is literally why we made one more game, was to follow a development methodology we call alpha-driven development, which is just get the game in front of people as soon as you possibly can. The very first version of the game we made was the I win button. It was fully networked. You loaded the game, you press start, you match made with another person. Whoever pressed the button first won the game. Certainly not fun. Technically a game. There's a loop there, right? We gave that to no one, spoiler, right? Like, you didn't need to give that to anyone to know that wasn't fun. Um, uh, 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 I think the first version we gave someone was maybe 7 months into development. And it occurs right around internal playtesting where you're like, did we just have a fun? I think we had a fun. And you give it to folks and they say, that could have been fun if you did this. And that's qualitative feedback. It's not quantitative. They can't tell you the game's going to be 10% more fun if you make this change, but they can say, I would have enjoyed myself more. Um, and provided no one was saying to us like, hey, go make a first person shooter. Like, we are not making a first person shooter. That is qualitative feedback that we would say, okay, maybe this is not for you. So wrong audience. But typically players, especially in early testing like this, they're your friends and your family, your guild mates, and they're typically willing audience members and along for the ride. And so over the course of this last 2.5 years, we've done testing, which I like to describe as rings, different groups of people, and then you expect certain types of feedback from those groups of folks. So there's internal playtesting, and even internally, there's like the gameplay team playtesting. So internal testing, bunch of game developers, they're going to give you game developer feedback. Once we figure out, yeah, this is basically good enough for us, we move out to one more ring, which was friends and family and guildmates, a willing audience, players that are going to give you great usability testing feedback and give you really great qualitative feedback. Really, in this stage, you're looking to make sure, can someone interact with the product? If they fail to interact, they're never going to enjoy the game. They're never going to play. Like, if your user interface is just broken, non-functioning, non-intuitive, players can't get past the user interface to even understand like why they would like to play this game. Another note there is we do this every week with that group. And we had a guarantee. I can guarantee you the game's not broken. I cannot guarantee you that you're going to have fun or that it's going to be balanced, but it won't be broken. We respect your time. And basically, we just went until that group was giving us good enough usability and qualitative feedback that we expanded to one more outer ring, which is public testing. And we're about to go into that right now for the third time in the game's history, which is open call to the internet. And hey, anyone want to play this? This is the first time that we're showing gameplay before we have the open call. It's the first time we're going to be working with content creators, streamers, YouTubers, TikTokers, and then also the first time that it'll be in the Steam store and anyone could just press play. But that outer ring represents like the last check. Did we make something that people love? And it takes forever.
Yeah. It's a long, repetitive process, but I think once you find something that hits, it's really awesome. And I think that you've got that here. I guess we'll see with the results of this this more public test. I'm really curious though on that second ring, the friends and family. How do you judge the funness part of it when you know that they're going to lie a lot of the time? I mean, everybody's got the friends and family that pretty much never tell the truth, that they're not really into the game. It's always great and amazing and they love it, but they don't actually play it. So do you like just check to see if they're actually playing it, or how do you do that? I don't know. Is there a trick?
Yeah. So, well, when you first bring someone on, we run what we call a new player experience, which is a usability check. You just sit in a room with someone, have them record their screen, and you say nothing. It's the most awkward thing ever. And you just tell them straight up, like, I'm going to be very silent, and could you just talk out loud and tell me what you see? And then we just write notes from that. That's not typically them saying it's fun or not, but you can tell basically if they can use it and if they're having a decent enough time. It's only later, if you were talking to someone and they're not actively playing, that they may report, oh, I had fun, but you can watch them, especially in a competitive game, getting killed by the computer, and they're definitely not having a good time, or they're failing to use the game, right? But once you get past usability issues, it's really about just understanding who the people are that are playing. You can assign like a persona to someone. One of the ones that we've used, because it's a competitive game, is basically, are you gold or platinum? Like, what group of competitive player may you be part of? And the thing is, your friends and family aren't all gonna play your game. They're gonna help you with usability. They're gonna give you a decent idea, like, is this fun? But what we're calling a real-time battler is definitely not. We don't think it's for every type of player. We would love if everyone decided this is the best genre. We're going to uninstall every other game on the internet. It's just not going to happen. We're in 2023. You're competing with all the games that people already love and Netflix, right? So the other way to check here is you have folks that say, I like this, but I think my friend might like it more. And you pull in friends of friends. And eventually you have a pretty different looking group than what you started with. And then you check, are they coming back? And so the final check I think that you need to pass before you go to a larger group is, are people showing up not when employees of the company are running the test? So like, if I'm throwing a party in my front yard and everyone shows up, great, thanks for coming to my party. If I go to bed and you're still in my front yard 3 days later,
you need to call someone.
Parties, right? Yeah. And that's literally how I think about making games. Yeah, you got to call someone. Get out of my front yard. Yeah. But when people show up and you're not there, you know that you're going somewhere.
I think that makes a lot of sense. That's interesting. People probably start to learn from that and use that in their own processes a little bit. I like the just growing the rings too. I think a lot of people kind of skip straight to, I'm going to give this out to everybody publicly and get random feedback. So thanks for that. I want to dive into some of the technical stuff, because a lot of the audience watching are going to be game developers, programmers, and a lot of them are Unity developers. So I was kind of curious. I know you built the game with Unity. What was the initial reason, or was there an initial reason that you guys decided to go with Unity? Is it just something you were already familiar with and using, or was there a specific reason for it?
I could take this, but Peter, maybe you want to.
When I showed up to work the first day, we were using Unity. So.
This is why it's so. Okay, the answer is we did an engine evaluation, and we thought the Unity tools were much more iterative, and build times would be lower. And it kind of just fit in with our idea of rapid development and iteration. Wanted our builds to be, ideally they're less than 10 minutes. Right now they're probably like 30 minutes or so. And we could optimize things. That's not because of Unity. It's like there's a long chain to deliver a game into Steam, right? That was the original reasoning. It's probably better to say, why did you stick with it? And that's something Peter and Lewis could answer better than me.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like C#. C# is just a fun language. It's got a lot of the sort of meta tooling around it, like being able to reflect on stuff. And we use a lot of generated code and generated data. So all those tools help us do that quickly and efficiently. So
yeah. And we're also able to share that language between our build server or our game servers. And, we basically use it everywhere. So as a developer, you're not like jumping around with your brain trying to, figure out, is this JavaScript? Is this C#? Is this C++? Is this, what the heck did we use at Undead? But I don't know.
Elixir.
There we go. Yeah. I was like, which is just, a completely different way of thinking. And then additionally, I think it's very easy for non-programmers to get into Unity and like edit those C# scripts. And like, there's lots of times where I kind of just point a designer or an artist at something and say, hey, here's where all the knobs for, that VFX is. And they can get in there and make something way prettier than I can. And it all just works. They don't need to worry about the game just freaking crashing on them or whatever, because Unity's kind of nicer about all the air handling stuff. Yeah. And also we both came from a previous company where we used it to develop games. So we were familiar with the engine, and knew that it would work for us.
Nice. Yeah, I love it personally. So, and I love C# too. It's one of the main reasons that I like Unity so much. That, and I think kind of like you said, the usability where designers and even people who haven't done game development before, I can bring them in and have them work on stuff. It's that easy. But for designers, it's drastically easier. And earlier we were talking about coding and using engines where the designers have to do all the stuff through code. And that's it's still totally the opposite of your kind of fast, rapid paced iterative workflow. So I think that's a perfect reason for using it. I'm really curious though, because you talked about the servers, and this is a multiplayer competitive networked game that's online. So how does that all work? And I'm sure there's some stuff you may not be able to talk about, but anything that you can talk about, like how is that server set up? Is that all running Unity in the background? Is it using dots? Is it doing something totally different? Is it some terrible JavaScript that you hate? Or what is that workflow like to do the server and the client?
So we're using ASP.NET and just C#. We're not using any Unity specific technologies on the server. It's using a sort of an actor model. So each game is running in isolation from all the other games. Each game is single threaded. So we basically post inputs and other messages to the context, and it then runs the simulation and sends updates as needed. So it's not tick based. It's all, if you say cast a spell and that spell takes, 2 seconds to cast, then after 2 seconds, the game server wakes up and does what it needs to. And then the client sort of interpolates what it knows to be true. So yeah, it lets us get it's a similar model we've used on previous games. It's a very efficient server model, so we can get a ton of games playing, I think, several thousand at once, just, without any problems.
Nice. I think that makes a lot of sense for the scale, especially for the type of 1v1 battle game that you've got. And I don't think it's something that people would have necessarily thought of. Peter, can you add some more to that?
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned dots, and we actually started out using dots for a bit, but we ended up switching to a different ECS system called Leopardum, and that's able to be shared between our server code, which doesn't use Unity, and our client code. And it's pretty simple, where, it's just single threaded, and most of our entities in the game are just sets of tag value pairs, which are just like integers. And then the way the game actually updates is, just checks for those integer values changing. And then based on those state changes, the client will interpolate to whatever the next state is. And it also makes network serialization really easy because you're just, serializing integer pairs down to the client. Don't need to really write any custom code or anything like that. And it also means that designers can add, tags anytime they want, which is, a blessing and a curse sometimes. But, it's all very simple, easy to understand. And then all the, cool stuff on the client, we just build off of those integer value changes.
It sounds really cool. It sounds like a great setup for the type of game that you're building in. Like I said, I think it's something that a lot of developers don't necessarily think of. A lot of the time they get in and just instantly dive into client server, in something that's just right in the engine. And yeah, I guess you mentioned that you started with dots. How did you guys start just the Unity project in general? Can you talk I'm really curious, what was the early on, we're kicking off this project, what did that look like? Was there a lot of planning before it? You just go open up a new project and start writing code, and you made the I win button thing, and that was the start, and you just started building in that project, or how did that go?
Yeah, so I'm typically a server programmer, so I'm the reason that they used Elixir at that last company. Client code was brand new to me, so quite simply, I watched your channel, and was like, oh, okay, this is how I get things going, and then probably did maybe a month or two of research on the package management system and the different packages that Unity had, and watched some of their, I think it was called Unite, or is still called Unite. Watched a bunch of their talks, and just tried to get equipped from watching various content creators. And then, that this is pre-funding. So we couldn't bring on Peter and Lewis yet. So I quite simply had to just become the basics of a client programmer. And then when Peter and Lewis came on, I said, I'm sorry, and gave it to them. and immediately started working on the server.
Yeah, but I mean, it was all great, and Unity makes it very easy to pull bits out and add bits back in. So we used dots for a while, and those were the very early days of dots. It was still like preview build and all that kind of stuff. So I hadn't thought thought like that before. It was a great learning tool, and I love experimenting with new ways to build games. But at that time, we were just running into, they didn't have all the features that we needed to make the game. So we ended up pulling that out, going with a simpler solution, which was Leopardum. And then, just kind of went from there. And I mean, like we've gone through so many iterations of the game. Like Jamie was saying, the first iteration was a real-time card game. So we went from that to what we have today. And it's just, it's a slow process, but got there over time, I guess.
It seems relatively quick based on what I've seen, at least. Maybe I probably haven't seen nearly as much of the work that you guys have done, but I'm really curious what that process looks like of kind of transitioning too. So you've gone through these different transitions, the game. Are you creating a new project and just pulling in the stuff that works? Are you just starting to refactor and change, you make a new branch and just start going and experiment? Do you have multiple branches going where you're just kind of experimenting multiple things and deciding which one to stick with and which ones to bring in? Or is there a process around that?
Yeah, we follow main is safe. That's another requirement. By the way, for anyone watching, main is safe is the idea that I could take the main branch, build it, and then push it into an environment, and people could test it and then promote that into a different environment. So we use feature flags, and just like we had that guarantee, the game's never broken. Can't tell you if it's fun or if it's balanced, but it's not broken. So main is safe is important for that. We also use Git, GitHub, branches. There has been a handful of times we've used a long-term branch, and this is part of what's special about the way we do development. Not everyone on a team always agrees about what direction you should go in. Strategically, you can align people. We are building something new, but the point of this is you keep it open, and then people will surprise you. Developers will surprise you with what we come up with. And so one of the branches was called Rocket League 3, just an internal joke for what if we used to have a random hand, the spell bar used to be random. Things would come in, you'd see what was up next, you'd cast it, it'd leave your hand, and you'd rotate through. Everything was basically a player spell. That is not how the game works today. You control 3 heroes now, but that's how it used to work. And we were having usability issues when we went into public testing. We saw them before we went into public testing, but we thought it was like a smaller group of folks. Like the persona of that person having issues, we thought was much smaller. We went into public testing and we got feedback that was qualitative, that said, no, quantitative, that said, the game is too difficult to use. We did that through surveys, hey, 1 through 5, rate your, what is your opinion on this statement? And we got a lot of folks having issues with agency over their heroes on the board, and understanding at any time what their opponent was doing, losing track of, what heroes were theirs, which were the opponents, a lot of issues. And so internally, it was actually Peter who said, we should just make this spell bar static. So stop with rotating spells out. And the thing is, that's such a monumentally different approach to what we were building and what we had just been building for about a year. And the idea that we could just try it was important. So, on the design team, we can never do this. This would just be a brand new game. Peter, how long would it take to try that out? I don't know. How about a day? I think it was a day's worth of work. We just switched the whole thing out, took that branch, published it to an environment. We tested that day the random bar and the static bar. I have video of both of those playtests. I happened to look at it not that long ago. It was July of 2022. So, yeah, something like that. Maybe, yeah, believe so. Doesn't matter. And you can look at both builds side by side, and we were testing them within 30 minutes of each other. And so this is another like reason that Unity, C Sharp, GitHub, these tools are what enabled us to get through really subjective, difficult conversations because we could just try it instead of theorize what it might be like.
Yeah, I mean, similarly, we had another test where, like right now, it's 1v1, and we were able to create like a 3v3 mode and tried that for 2 weeks, and we're like, nope, this actually isn't working, and we could throw that away and go back and work on what we were originally working on. So
that 3v3 mode
awesome.
taught us so much, even though we knew, nope, don't make it like this. But it answered like three major questions, I think, for our design team. One of them was, as soon as we added respawning back into the game, it then meant that heroes, like KOing a hero, wouldn't basically remove your left arm for the remainder of the game. Like they come back in 8 seconds. It's just a temporary setback. And because we did those things, we then were able to fix agency issues. Players are controlling heroes now instead of like this overworld casting. So
that is interesting. I remember before you released the multiplayer thing, I thought, oh, multiplayer, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Just needs it if it was multiplayer. And then it came out, and I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, maybe I was wrong. I was wrong about that. But I played with the respawning, and I think you definitely kind of found the cool, fun part in that. And I also just want to say that I think it's awesome that the development team, the engineering team is also able to bring in game design ideas. I think that a lot of the places that do stuff well, that's kind of the case. I've seen some places where like it's absolutely unacceptable and you get in trouble just for the idea. But most of the places that are doing good stuff, I've seen that, if you got a good idea, you're welcome to go try it out, experiment, and then show it. And if it's cool, they're happy to see it. So
so I think about this regularly. Lewis made mention in a random Slack thread, very flippantly, hey, who should be able to choose their next upgrade first? And he just comes into the conversation after a bunch of theorizing and says, I don't know, how about just make it whoever just lost the last round? And the answer was, well, we're going to do that. Let's do it. And never been a better improvement to the pacing of the game. Yeah.
Yeah, that one worked really well too, because I feel like every time I lose a round, which happens a lot, like I get to pick first at least. And I feel like, hey, now I've got a chance. I still usually lose, but I feel like I've at least got a better opportunity. I just need to start making better picks.
I think the idea can't be oversold that good ideas come from everywhere, and the idea that we would listen to players but not our developers is insane to me.
Yeah, without a doubt. So I want to ask another somewhat technical question. I'm kind of curious on the Unity side if there was anything that was very difficult or problematic or that you really had to fight with, or was it all just super simple and easy and no problems at all? Everything else is I don't know. I mean, we've all got some history, so I know I've used some tools that make it seem like everything is perfectly fine in Unity to the point where I don't even notice that it crashed because, it crashed, but it reopened instantly. I forgot that it even crashed 3 times today or whatever. So I'm curious, what's your experience been like? Do you guys run into any problems where you're like, this is really difficult, and then solve them?
Well, the addressable system is very mature. Let's say it's got a lot of features, and it's not always obvious how you're supposed to use it. So I think we struggled a bit with that, just because we didn't fully understand the system.
But that was another one that was in preview mode, I think, when we started, and we've been with it now, and it's like the inner workings have changed so much that we kind of have to relearn it every now and then too. But yeah, I think Lewis is right. That's been one of our biggest pain points. And I remember there was a certain point in time where there's this magic checkbox that's embed editor CRC version in assets or whatever. And before we click that checkbox, anytime we upgraded our editor version, we'd basically have a version of the game that you couldn't launch until we all of our AWS, all of the places where we keep our assets were cleared out and the new versions were there because, the asset itself, we would embed the CRC of its contents as part of its file name, but the internal CRC would embed the editor version inside, and that wasn't taken into account when generating the file name CRC. So you could actually have two assets with the same file name CRC that weren't compatible, which, yeah, just the way that, we were uploading our assets, that was a pretty big pain point. But then, yeah, they introduced the checkbox, and now everything's great. So,
yeah, I found addressables difficult at first, especially in the early days. They were really kind of a pain to work with, and I still find that they're not the easiest system. Out of everything I use in Unity, it's one of the more difficult ones to work with. Most of the stuff's pretty easy, though, so it's relative.
Yeah. I mean, I think it can trick you, too, where you can kind of think that everything is working well. Like, I guess the other big pain point that we had is that, you can bundle the same asset in two different addressable groups. And if you use that asset as like a key into a table, that means that, if there's two versions of that thing, the key isn't actually going to match. And one of the places where you can use a key like that is the animation override system. So we had problems where like the same animation was getting bundled in different spots, but then the key lookup would fail. So that's another one of those things where now there's this remove duplicate dependencies or something like that. There's in the addressables help menu, and it just finds all that stuff for you. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll just run this every now and then. Now everything's good. But yeah.
Since we're talking about addressables, if it's okay, I think people might get some real value out of it. Can you just explain how you're using addressables in the project? Like what the actual use is? Are you loading everything after the game's been launched the first time? Are you loading some things on demand? Are you using it to manage memory? Like what can you loosely explain that use case and how you've set it up?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is still something that's kind of like we're still figuring this out, and a couple of different systems work differently. But for the most part, based on asset type, we bundle assets together. So, like, we've got basically a folder where all our units exist, and then we have I think it's called an asset post processor that just watches, new assets getting shoved in that folder, and then we end up generating addressable groups automatically by just looking at all the units in that folder and then kind of trying to split them out so that we're not loading all the units at the same time, but also don't have an addressable group per unit. There's kind of 3 per addressable group. And then when the game loads up, we basically load what we call, our core addressables, which is stuff like all our help menus and settings menus and the home scenes and all the stuff that you need when you hit that home screen. But then when you go into the game server is going to tell you all the assets that are actually used in that specific version of the game, because we know the deck that the player's coming in with and all the items that could show up during the item round. And we'll ask the client to preload all those specific assets, so you're not loading the entirety of the game all at once. And yeah, so that's kind of forward thinking for mobile, I guess, because we don't want, our mobile clients to have to load all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I guess that's basically how it works.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Can somebody talk a little bit about that kind of forward planning too? Because, I mean, it sounds like what you've got there, I mean, I run it on an insanely powerful desktop or laptop system where I probably am not going to see much of the benefit from the addressable loading. But I can imagine on the low-end system and on the mobile devices, it's huge. And, I mean, it sounds like you guys are architecting this well to be ready for all of that. So can anybody talk about kind of what the plan was there and how you decided these are the things that we want to be ready for and these are the optimizations and things that we want to kind of decide? I mean, it sounds like you also have done that on the server side. You want to be ready so that you can easily scale to millions of players without taking down the internet, right? And just sending over just the data that's needed. So I'm going to shut up now and let somebody explain a little bit about this.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. The first was we set out to build something that was competitive and online, but all three major input devices could be competitive with each other. That doesn't mean we're going to accomplish it. It's just a desire we had was, hey, PC, keyboard, mouse versus controller. Like that would be really great if you could compete against each other. And the same thing with touch. So three main inputs are keyboard, mouse that we considered as keyboard, mouse, controller, and touch. We're not going to support Guitar Hero controller, I guess, but that would be great to try one day. Yeah. That's the first one. The second is, so on League, one of the things that was extremely powerful for us was that the game could run on anything. It could run on toasters. Literally anywhere in the world, you could go into like a PC Bong, PC Cafe, and the game ran. And that was super successful because it made the game global. And it's a great competitive game. And there's something really special about, being able to walk down the street and see a bunch of people playing soccer, and it's a great equalizer, right? And so for competitive esports, I believe it should be the same, where you shouldn't need specialized hardware to play in a competitive game. That doesn't mean that we should sacrifice, graphic settings and tunings, absolutely, but that was also a huge goal for us. So the only right way to plan for that is to build it right the first time, or nearly right. We talk a lot about one-way doors, where you go through it, you're making a choice. It's going to be difficult to get out of that door. And the more that you go through, the more difficult it is to roll those decisions back. And so we are focused on PC right now with keyboard and mouse, but the game's working on the Steam Deck. We won't be telling anyone it's officially supported because the controller doesn't work just yet. And we've been running the game on lower spec. I think it was iPhone 8 is what we were running it on. Again, not going to be something that anyone can play for a while because it takes a lot of optimization around the UI, and the control scheme might need to change just a bit as we've iterated. But something that was really important to us was planning for it, and with the eventuality, hopefully, that it occurs. But like I said, it's most important for us to deliver a great PC experience.
You definitely have done that, and I like that it's optimized and ready to go onto the iPad and stuff, or maybe not ready, but eventually be ready to. Because when I was playing, I noticed one of the things I did was grab out my touchscreen laptop and switched over to that. So I just want to touch and started dragging things. Well, before that, I was using a trackpad. Initially, I started playing. I was at home in bed just playing. Yeah. But the touchscreen is, I think, a great setup, and I think that's really awesome. You guys are kind of prepared for that and thinking ahead, and the idea of these one-way doors, I think that's freaking brilliant. Are there any other examples of those that you can think of? I mean, I could see it maybe with the networking setup that you've done, but were there any other decisions like that you had to make in advance that you wanted to make sure that kind of prepared you for the future, either technically or design-wise?
I can give you a couple, and I bet both these guys can give you one too. The first year, we had no funding, and we just built on foundation, like literally setting up AWS and Azure. We're multi-cloud, being able to move between both. All of it is fully automated. No one logs into a GUI and makes a change to anything. Setting up a CI/CD system immediately. Just all the things that you would expect to have on a well-oiled ship, you still need to set up first. And making all of those choices in the first year enabled us to immediately hit the ground running. And we're not worrying about putting build server fires out, or the connectivity on the cloud, or trying to figure out routing rules in our network. It's all solved, and then you just kind of build on top of it. And so I think that the first year was really well spent, even though technically there was nothing to play. It was a game company without a game for like an entire year.
Just with a bunch of infrastructure, getting ready. I think it's important. What about Lewis, James, or Lewis, Peter? Either of you guys have some other?
So early on, whenever we made a spell or any kind of ability in the game, you had to go write C# code on the server. Like that was just what you did. You open up this file, you found your entry, and you wrote a bunch of code there. And as we hired our first designers, it was pretty clear that that was not their wheelhouse, right? Like, and so we ended up switching over to a system where you're assembling the logic out of like little blocks and kind of hooking stuff up on events, kind of like Scratch or basically a custom version of a graphical programming. And then we would analyze that and then generate the C# code for the server, which ended up being really powerful because it gave the designers a large degree of fearlessness. Like, hey, if I can assemble this thing, then it's going to work. And it also meant that, like, oh, we need to change the underlying code for some action that is used in 500 places. Oh, well, that's easy to do. We just change this code. And so I think, I think we were a little skeptical to begin with. Like, can we really generate this code and have it not be horrible? And it turns out that it's been pretty great for us. So.
Nice. Did you find that was easier to manage than like a data-driven setup? I would imagine you have a relatively manageable number of abilities where you can kind of go through all of that code pretty easily. Do you find that was a lot easier? I would think so, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like at any given point, like the number of abilities we have active is not terribly high, but I think we've gone through over 500 different spells over the course of development. Like anytime we change something from 2v2 to 3v3, I mean, we used to have a thing where the heroes would appear on the board when you cast their associated spell. There was like, we've had crazy things. And each one of those, anytime you make a major gameplay change like that, you essentially have to rewrite all your content, right? Like a spell that worked in 2v2 is not going to work in a spell that's 1v1. And so the fact that programmers don't have to go in there and like re-architect all the spells and all the abilities and passives and items and leader bonuses and other bonuses and things, like we have entire types of content that don't exist in the game anymore. And yeah, so just letting Henry or Nick just run wild and make new content has been really helpful for us.
Yeah, Henry and Nick being the designers, and like we've also been able to utilize that same system to like script out our tutorial and all that kind of stuff. It's been really powerful for us.
Anyone that's listening that has just played SpellCraft is going to be like, "What are all these features? I've never. What's what is a deck?" The other thing is
2v2.
Yeah, it's all what we called it when we were iterating, and now it's probably not what it is public facing.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to have mana in the game as a resource, but no one ever knew it was there, so we just took it out.
I don't remember it being there myself, so sounds about right. Well, I guess there's one last thing I really wanted to ask you guys about, which was just for some. Well, I guess it's two things, because one I think is probably more for Jamie, which is about say people want to get in and start up their own game company. Maybe assuming that they're coming from a place where they've actually got some game development experience. They've worked at a studio. Maybe they're currently working at a game studio. I'm not expecting advice for the college kid who has no experience out the door. But say they're in that situation. Is there any just general advice you would give them to kind of do it right and not just mess it up? Because I feel like you guys have done it right. You've done a really good job. You put something together well, and it's not one of those things that just falls apart like you see so often. So do you have any advice for somebody who's kind of wanting to do basically kind of what you've done? Assuming they're not competing with your game. They're making an FPS or something.
Well, first, I would not mind.
I'm just kidding.
The thing is, there's no monopoly on fun, and that's the best thing, right? But the number one thing I would say is don't do it yourself. Find a co-founder or find a founding team. Make sure that the person that is your co-founder or set of people is your co-founder is someone you'd be comfortable marrying. I mean, like literally, you're getting business married. And I mean, in the sense of detangling.
Where's my ring?
It's in the mail. But it's extremely important. You're going to be doing this for maybe a decade together, and you better choose the right folks. The other is it's not always about programming skills or technical abilities. Being able to navigate difficult conversations is going to be something that you're going to be challenged to do every single day. And work on your, I think we call them core skills now, soft skills. They're extremely important. And, we spend all our time in our editor, and it's really easy to detach yourself from the rest of the group. I'd say above all else, that's probably what has allowed us to succeed. Is everybody is a good actor at the table, and I'd say super important to do that. The other is eventually you're going to need money. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about getting funding. The way we went was through venture capital. Find people that you're also going to want to work with for a long time. Our investors are a set of amazing people. Luckily, we had run into someone that was an ex-colleague of mine at Riot, and that was one of our initial investors. But it's hard to raise funding. There's other ways to do it, but that's the one that I could speak to best. But find good partners, have a good idea. That game you don't need a game that even looks close to done. We did it with an idea of a game. And that idea was, hey, we're trying to build something new. I told you this just about 45 minutes ago. That is the same idea today as it was back then. And people were interested in. It's something that you can't just download on Steam. And so it's probably the best I got for someone just starting out. And then remember that luck plays in a lot. Meeting various people, being in the right place, talking to people. Just put yourself out there. And it's giving a talk, going to a conference. It's not a transaction. You don't know what you're accomplishing because a year later you may find, oh, that person that you met or they were in an audience when you spoke. So just remember that it's not a transaction and it has long tail effects.
Yeah, you definitely got to get out there. I think what you said there is super important, getting out there in front of people and being willing to put yourself out, I guess, and not be afraid, and also just not expect something instantly in return. And I think that your initial point, it's funny, I can't talk too much about this. I was having a conversation earlier about a partnership that was not going very well this morning. It's the same kind of thing. I feel like one of the most important things, if you're going to have a partnership, you've got to have it with somebody that you really know well, that you trust, that is going to work as hard. And it sounds like you've kind of done that with your whole team, where everybody is fully invested and everybody is putting in the work. It's very easy to have that team where 1/3 of the team is doing 80-90% of the work, and then the rest of the team is kind of doing a little bit of stuff. So you guys seem to have definitely solved that problem. And I think I lied. I said I had one more question, but there was one other thing that I want to bring up before I talk about programming jobs, because it's so relevant today. Do you guys have thoughts on the engineering side and the game dev side on all of the AI stuff that's been going on right now? I just, in the last, yesterday, I built a Cortana simulator that does a little hologram thing on my Tilt 5 board, but I did it all by having ChatGPT write the code for me. I didn't even write it. And when I was doing it, I was looking at it and I was thinking, all of this code is all of the stuff that when I was a junior programmer, it would have been assigned to me. It's all the tedious, go integrate with this API, fix the error handling, do all this stuff that's not really thinking work. It's just find and search and match. But it was all of the junior dev work that I used to have to do when it kind of started out. And I'm getting more and more concerned for new programmers. And I'm curious, 2 weeks ago, I wasn't concerned at all. Now I'm a little bit worried, and I feel like I'm getting more and more, but also excited about the possibilities, because I was able to do all of that, in bed in half an hour without having to even think through, how does this Microsoft API work? So do you guys have thoughts on this whole AI war that's about to come, or whatever it ends up being?
I could talk to non-technically. People believe automation replaces jobs, but it ends up creating additional jobs. You may not be writing boilerplate code anymore, but you'll be equipped to be able to talk with an AI to generate the thing that you need to fix the boilerplate code. You also need to understand and how to reason about that code, even though the AI said, "Trust me, it's good." If you don't know how it works, and you have a problem, it's going to be a very big problem to solve versus, "Oh, I know what line and what file that's on. Well, I basically know what module that's in." I've been using GitHub Copilot for about a couple months now. It's pretty good. If I don't feel like writing something and I want to ask, it comes up with something pretty good. Every once in a while, we'll be in a meeting and someone will say, well, let's ask ChatGPT. And then it gives you a pretty good answer. And you're like, God, makes you feel like you're going to be obsolete. But I think the biggest takeaway from this thought is don't embrace it. Don't be the person that says, I'm not going to be interested in this technology. There's a bunch of times in history where we can point to that, and those are the people that get replaced. It's not going to be anyone that's embracing the new thing.
I remember the people who kept telling me they didn't need the internet. I don't need the internet. Like, what?
Or how about when
90s?
How about when C was a high level language, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. And, I mean, like for me, I think we're all about rapid iteration, and if you can have something else just popping out code for you, you're going to be able to explore your own ideas even quicker. And then once you have a good idea, you can actually go down and write the code yourself that actually matters. But I think the most important thing is getting to that idea, making sure that it's fun and not wasting the time like writing a bunch of code that you're just going to throw at anyway. So I'm excited about that kind of stuff.
I just kind of hope we start using AI for better things than writing Pong and Python or something, like, great. Okay. We also have or whatever. Yeah. But it's just like, we've got some bigger problems in this world right now that maybe we could put the AI towards that. But, if I have to lose my job as a programmer because we found a way to, do something better for humanity, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm less worried about the senior programmers. It's more the junior ones that I think, like Jamie said, don't embrace the technology. Like if you're just going through a normal program now and you're not looking at the AI stuff, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage by the time you're searching for a job. And even by like next year, I feel like if you're not embracing this and understanding it and realizing how easy it is to use, you're going to leave you behind. Just watching the jump from 3 to 4 on the code quality and what it was able to do just so simply and so fast. I'm worried that like with 5, the errors are going to start disappearing, and then with 6, it's going to be better at finding errors than I am and correcting them, which is fine. Again, I'd rather solve the bigger, more fun technical problems than the low-level code. But I think that people need to be ready and adapt and stock up in case the AI declares war.
Yeah, just remember that in 1996, my teachers were telling me that I couldn't use the internet because it was cheating. Okay.
I tell my kids to use their AI all the time on their stuff now. I'm like, yeah, just use that. Use it as a starting point. Make sure you understand it. Read the explanations. It's the way to go. It's the world is changing. So my last question was for Peter and Lewis, and I'm just curious if you guys have some general advice for aspiring programmers who are kind of getting into the industry or thinking about getting into the industry. Jamie's question was more for the experienced ones who are kind of wanting to break out. And I'm curious for the people who are, maybe they're in college, they're in high school, still thinking about games. They really love playing games. Maybe they love, League of Legends and similar types of games. Like, what would you recommend to them to kind of break into the industry? Are there any things that you think they should definitely do? Is it like just become friends with Lewis or Jamie or something, or is it is there like some just good advice and tips you would recommend for them to get into the industry and get into something that they actually enjoy doing too, where they're not just working some job that they hate that happens to be somewhat game dev related?
I think mostly I would say figure out what you want to do in games. There's a lot of people who are like, I love games, I'm going to become a programmer, and then they find out they hate programming, right? Like, that happens a lot. Like, but there's a lot of jobs in the game industry. There's design, art, production. There's any number of jobs and different skills. So I think it's like, find the skills that you're good at and that you want to provide, and just focus on be good at what you do, right? Like find something you're good at, find something that's valuable to a games company, and you'll get in there, right? I think also just your peer group, like if they're into games, like your classmates or whatever, just make sure you're friends with them. Don't piss them off, because connections are super important no matter what industry you're in. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been following around my friends my entire career. That's, I mean, yeah, for me, I think like the biggest, I went to DigiPen, which allowed me to build a portfolio and actually like work with other people that were interested in games and kind of like figure out what I was interested in on those projects. And it, like, yeah, I've tutored some aspiring game developers, and the advice I always give them is just to work alongside other people that share the similar interests with you so that you can actually work to create something, figure out the things that you're interested in, and then you have a portfolio to show, a employer that, hey, I built this, I actually know how to do all this stuff. And yeah, I think it makes it much easier to get a foot in the door. Also, like, I originally started out, I was in school, I got an internship at ArenaNet, and that was kind of my foot in the door. And I wasn't getting paid a lot. I was still going to school, but ended up meeting a bunch of people at ArenaNet and like literally worked with Lewis, worked with Jamie, and ever since then it's like, all right, I got that foot in the door, and now 20 years later or whatever, we're running a game company. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is great. It's awesome, and I think that's probably the best advice. Getting a portfolio and knowing people and just meeting people and working with contacts and, like Lewis said, not pissing off your friends, I think is probably the biggest thing. That's how I got in, and how a lot of the people that I know, like, they get different game dev jobs. A lot of time it's through another friend. Some position opens up, usually they're reaching out to other friends. And Jamie, I don't know if you've got some advice on this. I assume you have probably some amazing advice. So I want to leave it with that, and then just give you a real quick chance to talk one more time about the game and tell everybody where to grab it and what to do when they grab it.
There was a question.
Oh yes, just on any general advice on the getting into the industry part. Sorry.
Oh, got it. Sorry.
Just, for the newbies, the people coming in fresh that aren't already there.
Yeah, I think the best advice I can give anyone is no job is above you. I'm sorry, you're not above any job. Yeah. Just be a good team player. Foot in the door is extremely important. I started in operations, working graveyard shift, and just be a team player. Try to solve problems and find any thread you can pull on.
Yeah, that's how I started too. I started in QA, right? Just at a pay cut in a very expensive area, but it paid off, and I think it's worthwhile. Now, the last thing was just on this game, SpellCraft. Can you just tell everybody where to go grab it, how to grab it, and if there's anything special you want them to do after they grab it?
Yeah, so I assume this will be airing after or on April 6th, provided it is, and you're watching it then. You can download it on Steam. It's just look for SpellCraft in the store. It'll be listed as a playtest. It's not the final game. It is a public alpha. We're running some we're calling preseason 1. There is a ranked mode in the game. Anyone that participates will get a ranked. It's going to persist throughout the life of the game. So if you get it now, you'll have that preseason 1 badge. You'll have the cred. And there'll also be a global leaderboard for the top N number of players that achieve a certain rank status in our rank system. It's very important that you play ranked with us because we're testing these systems for the first time. It takes a lot to balance a skill-based matchmaking system. So please play ranked and tell your friends, stream it, and make some sick teams and then share them with people. Try to find what's broken. It helps us.
Yeah, the game is definitely a lot of fun. Before we go, anybody have a team build recommendation or their favorite team build recommendation for someone getting in to go try right now?
Ooh. I'm a big fan of Squiddleston, Cage, and who's the other one? Solna. Basically, it's all about keeping Squiddleston alive because he ramps up over time, and then using Cage and Solna to keep him alive and distract other people from him. It gets really upsetting when this octopus is just tearing your team apart. So, yeah, yes, he's an octopus, and his name is Squiddleston. So,
yeah, he looks awesome.
I've been playing what we call a isolation Inez build. She's an assassin, and so take Cage with taunts, put him in the corner, so he spreads the group of folks out. Teleport onto the isolated opposing hero. And then I've been playing with Solna with heals and spell shield for additional, like keeping Inez alive while she's burning down your units individually. Very fun, and a lot of focus on getting Inez the most powerful red items in the upgrade rounds. So if you get Slayer on her, it turns her into a big beast.
Yeah, that's one I haven't tried. I'm gonna give that a shot. Peter, you got one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably what you call bronze tier. These two are much better than me, but I end up using Cage because I love his slam dunk ability. I think it just, makes me feel good when I can dunk on someone. And you can use that to, hit prize balls, get the one-shot spells. And yeah, I mean, I end up having a fun time when I can click all the buttons and stuff. So that's what I'm all about.
Nice. Well, it's a great game, and I'm very happy you guys made it and extremely excited. You guys were all willing to come out here and share what you've done and what you built in some of this process. There's lots of great advice. So thanks again, guys, and I guess we'll say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Oh, yeah.